today for you to understand the will. There is something called the will. When we talk about will, we are talking about intentions. We are talking about what you want. And will is divided into three. What I'm teaching you is very, very deep. Pay attention. We have the will of man. Everybody say will of man.
Will of man.
We have the will of the devil. The will of who? The devil. And then we have the will of God. Will of God. So there are three kinds of will. We have the will of God, the will of man, and the will of what? The devil. Now, under the will of the devil, there are just three wills. Come, let me pray for you. We have the will of God, we have the will of man, and then we have the will of the devil. Now, let me tell you something. Man in the actual sense does not have a will. Because everything a man is doing, either he is fulfilling the will of the devil or the will of God. Anytime you see a man doing anything, what you are doing is either favoring the devil or is favoring God. Anytime you see anything that a man is doing, that man is either fulfilling one of these people. Either he's making the devil happy or he's making God happy. So in the actual sense, we can say man doesn't have a will of his own. So whatever man is doing is the will of one of these people. But there are certain things that you want to do that you feel if you do them, you will feel happy. But in the actual sense, as you are doing them, you are making the devil happy. So man in the actual sense is just having a neutral will that can be influenced by any of these wills. So the two wills that are most strongest on earth is actually the will of God. And the will of God and the will of the devil. And what is the will of the devil? What is the devil's intention for every man or for this earth? John chapter 10, verse 10. What did he say? The enemy cometh but to do what?
To steal,
to kill, and to destroy. And those are the three major will of the devil. No matter what the devil gives a man, he has one intention. It's either to kill you, destroy you, or make you to become useless on this earth. So if the devil gives a man a cow too, get ready. That's why no matter how yahooish you yahoo and get anything through the yahoo, there is a tendency that at the end of your life you end miserable. Check any man who has gotten illicit wealth. The end of his life is one of these three things: to kill, to steal, and to destroy. The devil either kills you, destroys you, or makes sure that you are never able to fulfill the rightful thing God planned for you. That's the will of the devil. Now, when you come, remember, that's the simple will of the devil, nothing more. Nothing more. If he gives you a car, he's getting ready to do one of these things. If he gives, that's why he doesn't keep without taking something. He has a plan, is to steal something from you. And the next plan is to make sure that something wrong is going to happen there. Are we together? Are we together? And then the next one is the will of God. Is the will of God. Now, under the will of God here, there is something called the actual will of God. Everybody say actual will.
Actual will.
And there is what they call the permissive will. Permissive will. God has two kinds of will. That is, when they talk about actual will, they are talking about God's original intention. And then when they talk about permissive will, they are talking about what God just permitted. Let it happen. Let it just happen. What God has permitted, let it just happen. Now, back to the story we read now. We read the story in Isaiah chapter 38 about a king by name who? Hezekiah. They said this king was sick unto death and God wanted the king to die. So God sent a man of God and said, go and tell that king that he will not rise up from that sick bed. I want him to die. And the Bible said the man turned to the wall and began to pray. And said, Father, I don't like this your will for me. I don't want what you want for me. I want something else. And he began to pray and pray. And the Bible says he cried bitterly. And when he cried, God came back to his permissive will. It wasn't God's actual design that that man should live 15 more years. But because his son had cried too much, he now bent his will. His actual intention for that man, he bent it and said, okay, I add you 15 more years. I add you 15 more years. Permissive will. It is not God's original desire. He doesn't want you to stay alive like that. My king Hezekiah, God wants you to die now. Gather your house, arrange everything, sleep down. What sort of honor? Do you know it's an honor for you to know your death day? Yes. It's an honor. The Lord gave this man an honor to say, this is the time you are going to die. Call your family and tell them, you are dying. You are a righteous man. You are a good man. I don't want you to stay too much. Just, it's okay. Give another room for another man. He said, no. This kingship, this presidency that I'm holding, I shall continue here. And immediately, God permitted him. Now, let us read. Everybody do read and stop there. You know, every time they are preaching messages to us, you know that every message they preach to us, they tell us that, oh my God, this man was going to die. And he told God, I shall not die. And God stopped it. And so he didn't die. You too, whatsoever. Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! But there is something deeper to that place than what we have been reading in time past. If you go to the next chapter, you will see something that will shock your spirit today. Isaiah chapter 39. From verse 1. I'm going to read verse 1. All of you will read verse 2. Like that, and we'll stop at verse 4. Look at it. At that time, Merodabaladan, the son of Baladan, king of Babylon, sent letters and a present to Hezekiah. For he had heard that he had been sick and was recovered. This was when the man had stood up from his sick bed. Verse 2, everybody, can we read together? 1 to go.
And Hezekiah was time and showed them the precious things, the silver and the gold, and the spice and the precious ornaments, and all the house
of his armor, and all that was found in his treasures. There was nothing in his house, nor in all his dominion, that Hezekiah shewed them not.
So now Hezekiah have risen or have stood up from his sick bed. And now he had the time. So the king of Babylon had heard that, oh, that king that was very, very sick is up now. So he sent people to come and greet him. And the Bible said when they came, Hezekiah was so happy that he took them around. He was just showing them everything in the house of God. He said, this is the house of God. That's where the priest sits. And he took them to his armor house, where they keep weapons. He said, this is what we have. This is how big the Lord has enlarged me. Showed them everything. And after he showed them everything, now look at it. The next part of it. Let's go again. Verse 3, I'm the one to read there. Then came Isaiah the prophet unto King Hezekiah and said unto him, what said these men, and from whence come they unto me? And Hezekiah said, they are come from a far country unto me, even from Babylon. Verse 4, what to go?
Then said he, what have they seen in thy house? And Hezekiah answered, all that is in my house have they seen. There is nothing among my treasures that I have not shewed them.
Verse 5, I read. Then said Isaiah to Hezekiah, hear the word of the Lord of hosts.
Behold, the day is come, that all that is in thy house, and which thy fathers have set up in store until this day, shall be carried to Babylon. Nothing shall be left, say the Lord.
Verse 7, and of thy sons that shall issue from thee, which thou shalt beget, shall they take away, and they shall be eunuchs in the palace of the king of Babylon. Verse 8, all of us together.
Then said Hezekiah to Isaiah, good is the word of the Lord.
He said, moreover, for there shall be peace and truth in my days. May the Lord bless his word in Jesus' name. Amen. Can I hear a living amen?
Amen.
So now let me explain the story to you here. This man was sick, and then now he had prayed against God's wish. Now, let me tell you something. God always sees the end from the beginning. So when the Lord is telling you about what He wants you to do, and you are giving Him your own option, you can only see the next steps that you are going to take. You can't even see beyond this room. And so God told this man, I don't want you to go ahead again. And the man said, I want to go ahead. God was seeing a blunder that this man was about to make in history. It was a blunder for Babylon to be at peace and to be in harmony with Israel. God saw that this man was about to make a blunder ahead. So God wanted him to end his life early without making any blunder in life. But he forced God against his wish, so God gave him a permission. Live more and yet 15 years. And the Bible said the very day he stood up from his sick bed, Babylon heard it, and the king of Babylon sent letters to him, saying, it is congratulations, you are up. And he took the people, tell them thank you, let them go now. He didn't. He didn't stop there. He took them and showed him his land. Everything in his land, he took them round and showed them everything, including his war room. And after showing them everything, they said, as he was showing them, Prophet Isaiah came there and said, who are these men? And what have you shown to them? And he said, they are visitors from a faraway country, even from Babylon. And they have come, and he said, what did you show to them? He said, I showed them everything. There is no single thing that I didn't show them. And Isaiah said to him, because of this foolish act that thou hast done, he says, your sons shall go to serve this land of Babylon. They shall be made eunuchs. Do you know the meaning of an eunuch? Eunuchs were the men who used to bathe the queen. And before you bathe the queen, they have to take off your own apparatus and anything. It's the most humiliating thing that they place men under. And so he said, because thou hast done this, your own sons will go and be eunuchs to them. That means your own sons, when a man becomes an eunuch, there's no progeny for him. There's nothing like a child from that man again. Which means your lineage will be cut short by this man. By this single act. And that, if you read according to the history of the Bible, you will discover that is why Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego went to go and serve in the land of Babylon. They were suffering the consequence of a mistake of a father. A father that God told him die, but he said, no, I want 15 more years. And in 15 years, he lived the most miserable life of his lifetime. He caused errors, caused blunders that almost caused the history of Israel. Why? One thing. I want you to die now. The man said, no, not now. And I told you something. I said, there is something called the actual will of God. What God actually predestinated and wanted for you and me. But man is full of certain excitements that he wants on this earth that makes him keep on bothering God. Well, God, that was why. Now let me tell you the danger of it. God's permissive will does not take you to hell. When God says, I want you to marry this young man, and you say, hey, Papa God, marry this young man. No, I want to marry this one. Oh Lord, I want to marry this one. No, I can't marry this one. God will say, okay, I don't want you to be a sinner. Because if God tells you do this, and you reject it, and you go and do this, you have sinned. So God doesn't want you to sin. So what will He do? He will say, okay, go ahead, my daughter. At that time, even when you die, it will not be written as a sin against you. Because it is God's permissive will. But it was not God's original desire for you. You are the one that forced Him to place you in that desire. You are the one that forced Him to change His mind. Now, what is the danger about it? When God tells you His actual will, He stands there to help you. When you tell God, no, this is what I want, He gives you the room and you face the battle yourself. That is why when Jesus went to the mountain, He knew that God's original desire was that Jesus die on the cross of Calvary. And as He was praying, He was telling the Lord, take away this cup from me. The cup of taking the sin of the world. The cup of dying on this cross of Calvary. Then He will remember, but if God changes His mind, I will bear the consequence myself. So Father, I will. I came today to speak to the life of a person here. I don't know what God has entrusted you as His will. I don't know what God is telling you on a daily basis. What is making you to know that this is my original plan for you? And maybe you are telling God, no, that your original plan is too slow. That your original plan is too active. That your original plan is making me to be delayed. I need to rush out my life. I need to meet up with my peers. Take me another route. And whenever man pushes God into permissive will, they bear the cross. Many of us today, our marriages is a cross we carry by the virtue of disobedience to God's actual will. Many of us, the things we are passing through today is a disobedience to God's actual will. When God tells you this is what I want, most of the times it doesn't look like it. But if only you can trust Him with faith and follow His pathway for you, your greatness is an assurance. I told you people some time ago, say, look, this life, if you are not a man that learns to totally depend on God by the faith, sometimes when God tells you a thing, don't have faith in the process, have faith in the God. I said something one day on my social media platform. I said that sometimes the joy and the confidence of the journey is not that we have Range Rover Sport, but we have a good driver. Having a good driver is better than having a good car. When God is the one in charge of your life, driving and propelling your life, have the confidence not in the process, have the confidence in the God. The young lady said one day, he said, I don't know what the future holds for me, but I still know who holds my future. And that's the better way and the better place to put your trust than any other. I was reading the Bible and I saw something crazy. I said, God's ways are not the ways of man. Look at what the Bible said. The Bible said when Israel came to the Red Sea, you know what happened? They came to the Red Sea. There was a sea before them. Moses cried out to God, God, what should I do? Guess what God said? God said, tell the children of Israel to move forward. Then stretch your rod. I said, God, that is not a good mathematics. How can you say there is a river and you tell somebody, jump into it, then I will dry the river? No! Instead, you should say, I dry the river, then jump into it. But God's mathematics are sometimes upside down. They take it from the backward, they run it behind. That's why the book of Isaiah said, as the mountains, as the heavens are far above the earth, so are the ways of God far above the ways of man. What is the Lord telling your own life? What has been God's instruction to you? What has been scriptural truths that the Lord has laid to you? Some of us may say, God has never spoken to me. Hasn't this Bible spoken to you? Hasn't this word spoken to you about what you should do, what you should not do? But we still decide and pick up our own strategies. And as long as we are keeping up with our own strategies, life keeps on bending for us. The biggest prayer a believer can pray on this earth is, Father, thy will be done. Thy will be done. Oh my God. I was talking with a lady here. She came here the other day and I said to her, you know, God has been using us prophetically here. She came here and I looked at her, and when she sat with me here, this was where I was sitting, I remember. I sat somewhere here. She sat somewhere there. And I said to her, said I wanted to go for a journey. I said, don't go for that journey. Don't go for the journey. And she was like, I'm prepared. I said, in fact, let's go for a program. We have a program back home. Let's go for the program. Like, I said, don't go to that one. You want to go down to the south too. I said, okay, that one, as you have said, I've cancelled you. I said, but this one, I want to go and see. I want to go and see him. I laughed. I said, okay, no problem, but don't go for the journey. Okay? Don't go for the journey. And I left. So she left for the journey. On the day of arrival, they were calling her for interview. And that was the major prayer we have been praying. Oh Lord, give her a job. As she was arriving the place she was going, They were calling her for an interview in Abuja here. And so she missed it. So when she came back, I just saw her the other day. I said, how was the journey? She said, if I knew, I would have listened to you. I said, that's good. I like that. That's the testimony on my own part. I went for a program in Makurdi. It's one of the things that have exploded in Makurdi there. I went for a program. Robert was there. I came in that program. I stood on the 5th day of the program. On the 2nd day of the program, I was the minister. I was ministering when the Lord told me that there's a young man, you are a Baba. I said, come forth. The presence of God is full in Kadobila here. Come here, you are a Baba. And you are in our midst here. Or you are very close somewhere here. Come. Am I lying, Mr. Robert?
No, sir.
It's on record too. And so they came. I called again. The guy didn't come. I don't know whether it was the shame of being a Baba or the shame of what. I came that day. And every prophetic word I gave was very correct. Very accurate to people. So I went back to the hotel room and I was like, oh God, you told me it was a serious case about a guy. I called this thing over and over. The person made sure, God, don't lie to me. I began hearing you. And so I came the 2nd day in the program again. I was preaching, I stopped again. I went back on that same thing. I said, there's a young man here. Don't show. And then I said, by the way, let me just say what God said I should tell you. They are going to call you for a journey after some days here. Don't go. If you go, the name of the Lord will be glorified. The guy I was talking about was in that program. And the woman that came to give the testimony said she was there with the guy. He knew it was the guy they were talking about, and he was not telling the guy. We are just next to the church. It was an open air crusade. The guy is just next to the church. And the lady, they were standing there. I believe they must have been underrating what God was doing. And after the program on Sunday, Monday passed, Tuesday this boy rose up and went on a journey with some boys. And called boys butchered the boy. They butchered him. He didn't come out. They butchered the boy. And it became the name as usual, like I said, the name of the Lord will be glorified. And the woman ran to the church crying. This is a serious testimony in Makurdi church. Crying that day they were saying if she knew, she was feeling guilty, she would have dragged the boy, dragged him. It's today that you drag him. But that's how people could. Most of the times, when the Lord is telling you things, they don't even look like it. You calculate it, it doesn't rhyme. It will not rhyme. That's why I gave you an example with Israel. He said, march forward. Then Moses, stretch your rod. March forward. Then Moses, stretch your rod. Why didn't he say, Moses, stretch your rod? Then tell the children of Israel to march forward. Why did he say that? God's ways are not necessarily the ways of men. I don't know whether you are here. I don't know why the Lord has placed this as a message for somebody today. Maybe you are fighting and battling with the will of God over your life. It's dangerous. It's dangerous. It's time to tell the Lord, your will be done in my life. No matter what I feel, it's time we don't walk with head knowledge. We walk with God's knowledge. It's time we walk with God's knowledge. God's own knowledge. God knows better than we know. God knows better than we know. I told you people when I came into this town, when I came back home, in fact, I shared it in the morning that I refused to come back. I wanted to get balance over there. When I finished from school, I wanted to sit down, get myself balanced. My last visit home was a provoking one. The devil wanted to make me to run away from my destiny. I came the last time to pick up my certificate to go and conclude my things in school. When I came back, I woke up one evening, I looked around book. I just saw darkness everywhere and I was like, Jesus, this is the darkness the Bible speaks about. I remember there's a place we are staying, and light is not a testimony. Consistent light every day. And I said, God, I can't even come and stay in this kind of place. I can't. I was going back and I already made up my mind as I'm leaving. That was the last time home will see me. When I will come back, it will be for just maybe 1 week. I went there. The first day I washed the car of my spiritual father, came out, came back, sat in the parlor. The Lord appeared to me, particularly in the cloud. I saw them, my people were lined up, Nigerians particularly, lined up. And the man was flogging his legs up and down. He would flog and walk, flog and come down, flog and walk. People were just shouting, hey, hey. And I stood there like this. With stars, with this military uniform on my shoulder. And I stood there. And the cloud came down to certain level. And I heard the voice from it that said, you know if you say they should stop that, they will stop. Do you know if you say they should stop that, they will stop? I was like, I was burning my face. So immediately I woke up. I was like, what kind of thing is this? Broad daylight. After some time again, I went the second day, arranged the car, everything came back, and then laid on the bed in my room again, and placed the pillow. The next thing I went up again. This time the cloud came as close as this. As if I would just lift up my hands and put there. And it was as if it's a loudspeaker. They were still beating people again. And they shouted, do you know if you say they should stop this, they will stop? Do you know if you say they should stop that, they will stop? And I woke up worriedly. And that was the day I became restless to come back. But you know what? My coming back marks the joy, the best thing, the best decision I've ever done. And sometimes the pathway of God is very hard. It's as if it's hard, but if you can trust Him to follow on that path, your success is inevitable. Your success is inevitable. I don't know, maybe you prayed for a particular thing, and yet after all your prayers, God has still strategically lined you at a particular point. There's something God wants for you. Something God has in store for you. I will end it with this testimony. Many years ago, the Lord began to open my eyes to show me great things, because I started this path of Christianity at a very tender age. And I always share the testimony with you people now. Said how my parents got married 8 months. My father became mad. They prayed until he came into God. He was healed, and then began to give birth to children. 4 of us, only me. I'm the only one left. Gave birth to first one, my operation died. Second one, operation died. Third one died in the womb. They cleaned up, and then they gave birth to me. And on my time, as they were doing the operation, the womb was damaged, so they removed it. And I became the last hope. That's why they gave me that funny name. And so I stayed on that path. And so from a tender age, my parents have told me that, young man, you come from a very brutal family. There are 2 things: serve God and live, or don't serve Him and you die. So first I started serving God. It was for the fear of it. But my service to God was first for the fear. I didn't start serving God because, God is good all the time. It was, no, they must not kill you. So at a tender age, you will see when they come to church, they can't keep me. It is bad. My father will hold me as a child. I will be doing like, and people will be saying, this boy is a small boy, this boy is a small boy. And I know my father said, he knew in his heart, what is pursuing this boy is not what is pursuing you people. So he dragged me on to prayers. People started calling me warrior, warrior. I stammered until the age of 7. I was a stutterer. Until the age of 7. When one day he fixed his fingers in my ears, people will be crying in the house. Whenever they see me, people will be crying, saying, Aya, how can the only child be doing this kind of stammering? And you know one funny thing about stammerers? When they start pronouncing a word, whether you help them, they must end it themselves. They say, I want to, he said, want to. Want to. They must also end the word. And one day I came to talk to my father, and when I was struggling with the word to speak, my father began to cry. And he fixed his hands in my ears and screamed, my only child. will not be a stammerer in Jesus' name. That's where the fluency comes today. And so from a tender age, my parents have shared this testimony with me. So I started following this path at a very tender age. I was ordained at 14 years. Very, very tender. I followed this path from primary 6. Primary 6, they started taking me out for programs at secondary schools. What am I saying? I'm heading somewhere. So my eyes became opened around just S1 and third term. I began to dream massively. The prophetic always start on that realms of dreams. I would dream things accurately. And so the Lord told me one particular time that you're not going to school in Nigeria. I went and told my parents. They laughed. They laughed and they said, God can do it. God can do it. You know that one of, we don't want to disappoint your faith. Because at the actual sense, the problem was not where you go to university. The problem was how we pay the next school fees. So they just laughed. And I told them from that JSS2, they began to call me white man. White man. It was a kind of mockery. And I've already chosen everything. They dragged me for jam. They dragged me like this for jam. I believed in it until. To kill the faith that I had, a woman came when I was in SS1 and said that I will take care of your university. I began to clap. At all. And that time they called her Mrs. There's something they were. And one of them, she was the Minister of Education. Came and began to fellowship with us. So every time the way I'm working in school, I'm working as somebody who have already gotten admission. I'm working confidently. And one day when I was in SS2, the woman stopped coming to our church. I knew that problem was starting. But I kept on believing since she made the promise, we won't have that promise, whether she stopped coming to church. SS3, around second term, the woman died. I knew that, yes, now officially you are in trouble. The other one was a thought, but now you are officially in trouble. I kept on depending. That was when I shifted back again my faith and I said, I'm not schooling back here. The reason I was planning to school was because there was somebody there. Now that person is out, so I put my eyes back again to that vision God showed me. I went and bought phones for Philippines. Prepared everything to go to Philippines. The week I was planning on going for the last registration, that was when Naira fell, dollar rose up. The school fees 1.3 that we were preparing became 4 point something. Immediately we knew that this is bye-bye. There's no way to that. And God shifted me to an African country, Benin Republic. I felt so annoyed. Because I've already told man, I've already started saying that, look, no black man will teach me again. I want white people. Only. Only. And God shifted. It was as if it was water. I never knew this was God's actual will. What he told me was true, but it was not a white. He wanted somewhere. God told me that land is a land of study. When I got into the Benin Republic, I tell you everything you see in my life today, if not 80%, at least 60% is a formative period in that land that I live at. From that land, God began to connect me to travel to other countries. I traveled, city traveling, came and told me, traveling, I've traveled. From that particular place I was talking about, God used that place to connect me to a man who sent me to a non-denominational Bible school again. I went into that school, and that's why today when you hear me speaking, you will hear the same Bible verse that you take and they have preached 30 years. If I'm reading it, don't be listening to it as if you are going to listen to what you have heard. Something deeper. At that place, that was the place I first started to do fasting, crazy fasting, 40 days. 3 dry days. No toothbrush in your mouth, no water for 3 days. That's where I got into understanding the love of God. I began to understand that Christianity is not about going to church. That's where I began to understand you can be the son of a pastor and be the official firstborn of the devil. That's where I discovered you can be born on the altar and be the most useless man in the kingdoms of darkness. And I began to dedicate. And I began to say, Lord, it's not just about using. I discovered that you can even be a pastor and be off track. And I began to cry out to God for deeper things. Through that place that God took me and I didn't like, that was the place God took me back into a place of relevance. Ladies and gentlemen, there's something deep that I want to bring to you today. Is to tell you that there is God's actual will for you. It is time to tell him that, Father, not my will again. Not my own will again. You may not know why God brought you to come and stay in that small room you are staying right now. There is something he has strategically for you. Maybe it's the only point where you can learn in life. You will be asking God, God, why did you permit this in my life? And God is saying that it is my actual will. I have something planned for you. You could be asking God, why am I here at this level? God is telling you that there's no coincidence for a child of God. I brought you here for a purpose. All you need to do as a believer is to say, Father, I will. Can I tell you something? Turn and tell your neighbor there is God's will for your life.
There is God's will for your life.
Tell the other neighbor there is something God has planned for you.
There is something God has planned for you.
We are left with 2 minutes to end today. And in these 2 minutes we are going to pray. All of us are going to pray for the will of God to be fulfilled in our lives. We are going to tell God, maybe back then I've been struggling with my own dimension. You have been seeking relevance on your own platform. It's time to tell God that no longer me. It must be you. If not your will, not my will.